A very warm welcome to everyone who is watching this video. My name is Shravani Bhattacharya and I work as an assistant professor in Assam Downtown University. Today's topic of lecture is Modern Schools of Psychology. As you might be knowing, psychology is the scientific study of the human mind, behavior, and experiences. Throughout the inception and the history of the discipline, there has been various approaches and understanding of what is the human mind and why or how do we engage in behaviors, what do our experiences teach us, and based on all of these ideas, there have been many different explanations. And there are some early schools of psychology, such as structuralism, functionalism, and Gestalt psychology, and today we are going to talk about the modern schools of psychology. The first school of modern psychology is the psychodynamic approach, and under it we have the psychoanalytic theory, we have the neo Freudian theory, and we have object relations theory. So, as you might be knowing, that this picture that you see right in front of you is that of Sigmund Freud, and he was the founder of the psychoanalytic approach. So, the psychoanalytic approach was introduced in the 1920s, and it stated that human behavior is motivated by sexual and aggressive impulses. And it was such a very strong assumption about human behavior at the time that it was introduced. It was introduced during a Victorian period where you were supposed to not talk about issues such as sex or aggression. You were only because the rules were very strict around that time, and if you were talking about this, then they would critically evaluate you. And Sigmund Freud did not fear all of that, and he gave his theory during that period, so during 1920s. And he one of the favorite quotes that I like about his theory is, unexpressed emotions will never die, they are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. So, Sigmund Freud said that there are three levels of consciousness. So, if you only focus on, understanding human behavior through what we see, what we hear around us, it is simply not enough. So, first we have the conscious level where we are completely aware of what is happening around us. Then we have the subconscious level where we become aware only if efforts are put in recalling it. And the unconscious level is includes matter that we are not aware at all, and this matter can range from conflictual thoughts and emotions, sexual impulses, aggressive tendencies which you could not express, and that is why they were repressed and sent deep down to your unconsciousness. So, Sigmund Freud talked about different methods through which we can bring out this matter from our unconscious. So, here's the question, that if we are talking about the conflictual feelings and thoughts which are suppressed deep in the unconscious, why do we even need to take them out? Isn't it better to keep it, hidden there, safe, uh, in a toolbox? So the answer is, it is not healthy, because these experiences, as Sigmund Freud said, it always comes alive, or it is always expressed in a very unrelated situation. Okay, so for example, say that a father who works in a company, and he has been rebuked by the office boss, and he cannot express his anger towards the boss, and he's very angry, so he keeps that anger hidden inside of him, and months pass until one day, he comes back from his office, and without any reason he displaces that anger um, on his wife and children, who are not related to the situation at all. So and he tries to understand, I don't know why I acted that way. It was so unlike me. So this is why it is important for us to express any kind of emotions that we have. Even if we cannot express it in that particular situation, there are always different modalities through which you can express your emotions, such as art, through music, through talking to a friend, etc., and so on. But coming back to our topic, he said that there are various methods of eliciting the materials from our unconscious. And the first method that he talked about is free association. So, what is free association? Free association is a technique where the therapist asks the client to lie down on the couch. And the therapy sessions, the psychoanalytic therapy sessions takes place on a couch, because you have to be very relaxed. You need to have a very strong bond with your therapist. Only then you would trust yourself and the therapist to bring out your unconscious material. It's very important in psychoanalytic therapy. So the free association method is where the therapist asks the client to lie down on the couch and talk whatever comes to his mind without censoring or filtering it in any way. So the therapist tells the client, I want to hear whatever you want to talk about. Okay? Don't filter it. Okay? Thinking that I might be pleased hearing some things or not pleased hearing some things. Just keep on talking. Okay? And after rigorous sessions of free association, the unconscious materials will come out during these attempts. So, the second method that Sigmund Freud talked about is dream analysis. And in here, he said that dreams are the royal road to the unconsciousness. And by this, he meant that, there are two types of content that we have in our dreams. One is the surface content, which you already know, and the second is the deeper content of that meaning. Yes? So, first, let us understand it through an example. Um, I saw a dream last night of snakes. And the next morning, I wake up and I try to understand what my dream was all about. So, the surface content of this dream would just tell me that yes, I saw a snake. Maybe it's bad, maybe it's not bad. I don't know about it. So it is at the very surface level where you cannot try to you cannot understand why you saw snakes there. Yes, but if you go deeper into the manifest content, then you understand that Sigmund Freud said that seeing snakes in dreams could mean that you would have a hidden high level of hidden sexual impulses that you're not able to express in real life. So here is the disclaimer is, if you see snakes, it does not mean that every time that you have sexual impulses. He said that it's very important to understand the background of the client, to understand the contextual point of view, and you have to take a series of dreams and then try to analyze the content of dreams. Then only you will be able to understand your unconsciousness more. Yes, so that was the second method, which is said through which we can understand our unconscious. Next is the hypnosis, where we hear about various myths about hypnosis, and let me just clarify it for you. Is if people tell you that hypnosis brainwashes you, it is not that. Nobody can brainwash you during the hypnotic technique, and this is because you are in full control of what you say, and you can choose to say some things and you can not choose to say some things. So this completely depends upon you, and you need to have a very strong therapeutic bond with your therapist. Otherwise, you will not feel free to say whatever subconscious materials comes out through that. So in hypnosis, the client is made to be relaxed, and when you are in a very relaxed and trance state, what happens is your attention becomes very focused. okay, which seldom happens when you're conscious, because we get so occupied with things that our attention gets divided in many other aspects. But when you're very relaxed, your concentration gets diverted to your body, to your mind, and you have a high degree of concentration. You're very relaxed, so it's very likely that you will be able to see some things or see some pictures that your subconscious shows you. So that is what the hypnosis method is. And mind you that, please keep this in mind, that one session of hypnosis is not enough to understand our unconscious. You have to undergo through various sessions of hypnosis. Next, Sigmund Freud talked about the defense mechanisms. As we know that our conflictual thoughts, feelings, aggressive impulses, sexual tendencies, they get repressed. So under this kind of repression, we have anxieties. Yes. So the way that we try to cope with this anxiety is through the defense mechanisms. So there are different kinds of defense mechanisms. For example, the first one of it is repression. In repression, you push down the conflictual thoughts, feelings from your conscious level down to your unconscious level. And examples of it could be in the form of, I don't know why I said that, I don't know why I did that. So, and so that happens at a very unconscious level where you don't know, it's very automatic. Some other defense mechanisms includes um, reaction formation, where you adopt an opposite reaction and thoughts and feelings to the actual thoughts and feelings that you have. Okay, so for example, a person with high sexual tendency, conflictual thoughts, will tend to adopt a position or a lifestyle of that, like a monk. Yes, so this is how reaction formation plays an important role. And another example of a defense mechanism is displacement, where you try to cope up with your anxiety by releasing your anger onto a safer and unrelated objects. As I have given the example a few minutes earlier about the man who has been rebuked by his boss, he comes back home and he is uh, he displaces his anger on his wife and kids who are not related to the situation, and he knows that they are not going to rebuke him in any way of how the boss can tell him things. So these are some of the defense mechanisms. There are a lot of defense mechanisms which I might be covering in the future lectures. So now let us understand about the theory of personality that Sigmund Freud said. He said that there are three structures of personality that we have to understand. One is the id, which works on the pleasure principle. So in id, you want instant gratification of your needs and you cannot delay your needs. So it is like a small girl, say, who wants an ice cream and she cannot wait and does not listen to her parents of saying that you can't have your ice cream now. She wants her need of ice cream met at that very instant. So our aid is like that, we want things at that very instant. Okay, so next is the ego. um, uh, Ego is like a balancing mechanism between the id and the superego. So the ego works on the reality principle. It tells us, okay, you want that ice cream, but let's see what your mom has to say. So it brings us to a very realistic situation, a very realistic mindset when we are about to engage in any kind of decision. And then we have superego, which works on the morality principle. And in superego is like a parenting figure. It says, this is not right, this is wrong. So the very act of the girl asking for an ice cream, if the mother says yes, you can have ice cream, then that is the appropriate way of behaving. Otherwise, if she behaves without getting the consent from her mother, then she would feel very guilty about it later on. Okay, so this is the various kinds of structural forces of personality which comes into being. Moving on, there is the Neo-Freudian approach, and if you are wondering what is the Neo-Freudian, these were the psychologists who were working with Sigmund Freud, but they were not satisfied with only understanding that human behavior is only governed by aggressive tendencies and sexual impulses, and but they said that ego plays a very important role, and say women and men are both equal, and it's not that men are superior to women like how Freud had postulated. So these are the various theoretical approaches under Neo-Freudian, and some of the well-known Neo-Freudians are Karen Horney, Carl Jung, Erik Erikson, and so on. In object relations theory, it focuses upon the early interaction patterns between a child and the immediate caregivers that plays an essential role in the development of personality for any human being. So if these kinds of experiences go wrong, then there could be difficulties in life adjustment later on. Moving on, we go on to the second wave of psychology, which is the behaviorism. And behaviorism rejected the view of psychodynamics, saying that you cannot study human behavior based on unconsciousness. So it's not objective, you cannot measure it, and it does not hold much validity according to them. And they said that the very approach to actually studying human behavior should be measuring experiences that are observable and measurable. These two criteria was very important for any psychologist to study the human behavior. So here we have even Pavlov, who said that never think that you already know all. However highly you're praised, always have the courage to yourself. I am ignorant. So, behavioral theories give a lot of emphasis upon the learning. So, how we actually acquire the learning from our environment. Yes, and it does not depend upon our unconsciousness. So, even Pavlov was one such behaviorist. Next is B.F. Skinner, who is also a major proponent of behaviorism. And he said that strengthening of behavior, which results from reinforcement, is appropriately called conditioning. In operant conditioning, we strengthen at an operand in the sense of making a response more probable or, in actual fact, more frequent. So, B.F. Skinner is associated with operant conditioning approach to understanding human behavior, and Ivan Pavlov is related to classical conditioning. So, Ivan Pavlov had said that if you want any kind of behaviors to be repeated, to be made consistent, then you have to reward those behaviors. Then only the behaviors become consistent and people will be more motivated to perform. In comparison to if you punish behaviors, then those behaviors will not likely take place in the future. So, depending upon all of these learning principles, it has various kinds of applications in clinical setup, organizational setup, and even in educational setups. The third is Albert Bandura's theory, and his theory is called the social learning theory. He said that we learn from our environment through observing and imitating others' behavior. And observing others' behavior and imitating it is not very simple. So, the first step is we observe people's behavior, and then we analyze it. in our minds if we have the ability to carry out those behaviors and then we imitate those behaviors. So this was why his behavior was called as the social learning theory. So and his theory is primarily learned by observing and imitating the actions of others. Now this also has applications in any kind of parent child modification behaviors, then educational setups, etc. Okay. Next, we move on to the third wave of sorry, this was the second wave of psychology, which was called as the cognitive psychology. So the second wave of psychology includes of both behaviorism as well as cognitive psychology. And Steven Pinker is one of the foremost cognitive psychologists of today, and he has worked exclusively on human thoughts and human mind. So there's a quote from him. um, Cognitive psychology tells us that the unaided human mind is vulnerable to many fallacies and illusions because of its reliance on its memory for vivid anecdotes rather than systematic statistics. So, our human mind is very vulnerable to be a victim of fallacy or biases or errors. So we can engage in cognitive errors when we start to engage in any kind of decision without even understanding it. So this branch of psychology exclusively focuses upon the cognition. That means the human thought processes. Let us understand this more. So it originated in 1950s. So what happened is during the World War II, the aircrafts were actually required to be designed according to be matched with the human comfortability. So during this time, what happened is this branch of psychology mostly originated from studies and researches that were being carried out during the World War II. And so they were studying about how the human mind works so that they could devise the machines or aircraft machinery much more efficient when dealing with the enemies. So during this time they came up with an important analogy about the human mind. So here they said that uh, as computer is to programming, the human mind is something like that of the humans is something like that of the mind's analogy. So for example, how computers survive on programming, even the humans survive on the mental processes which happens that cannot be seen. Okay. And so there is an input, you give in materials that you receive from the environment, you process it in your mind, and then you give it an output. Okay, so it is something similar to how a computer behaves. So cognitive psychology focused on understanding the simple mental operations such as perceptions as well as sensations, and the higher order mental functions such as thinking, problem solving, decision making, reasoning, as well as memory. The third wave of modern psychology is the humanistic school or and the existential school of psychology. So here, Martin Seligman is one of the forerunners of positive psychology, and positive psychology actually came into being because they were very unsatisfied with the studies that were going on during that time. They said that why are we only focusing on understanding the weaknesses, the errors, the unconscious conflicts of the human mind? Why are we not focusing on the positive attributes that makes life worth living? This is also an important part of any kind of a human behavior and the mind. So the aim of positive psychology is to catalyze a change in psychology from a preoccupation with repairing the worst things in life to also building the best qualities in life. And this is what is being said by Martin Seligman. And another author of the happiness research studies is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He said that a joyful life is an individual creation that cannot be copied from a recipe. So, for every kind of human being, their conceptualization of what it means, of happiness is their own construct. You cannot generalize happiness across all human beings. So it's a very unique creative capabilities that is present in every one of us, and we have to realize it over our lifetime. So the basic postulation of the humanistic school of psychology is all men are innately good. So every human being has inherent positive qualities. So the school of psychology focused on understanding the free will, the personal growth, and attempts to find meaning in one existence. Some of the major proponents are Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow, among many. And there is the theory of self, which was being said by Carl Rogers, where we have two kinds of self. One is the real self, that is who we are as a person, and ideal self, that is who we want to be. And when these two selves they are not matching with each other, it is said that we face many kinds of dilemmas and conflicts in our life. Yes. So then we have the theory of self actualization by Abraham Maslow, where he talked about various needs, a hierarchy level of needs. At the very first level we have physiological needs like hunger, water, sleep, sex. Then, only when these needs are satisfied, we move on to the safety needs, that is, having a shelter, having financial security, having the love of the parents met at early childhood. And then we move on to the third level, which is the belongingness level, that is, our desire to maintain and affiliate. So with people around us, people in the society. So as we are highly social animals, so we want people around us. So based on this, only when these three levels, lower level needs are satisfied, we move on to the esteem needs, that is having a positive evaluation of ourselves, and cognitive needs, where we use various kinds of higher order thinking processes such as judgment, decision making, problem solving. And then we move on to the topmost level of the hierarchy, which is the self actualization level. What is the self actualization level? You reach the level of self actualization when you have realized your creative potentialities to the fullest extent. So you are at the level where you're ready to give back to the society of whatever you have learned, whatever experiences you have gathered. So, a very few people are actually able to reach this level of the hierarchy. So, this is the level of the theory of self actualization that was being said by Abraham Maslow. Positive psychology also talks about personal choice, responsibility, personal growth, personality growth, positive feelings of self worth, human strengths, fulfillment, and optimal living. This is all about the modern schools of psychology. If you have any kinds of doubts, comments, and feedbacks, please drop a comment or you can reach me on my official mail. Thank you. Have a nice day.